up in the audio. There we go. Yeah. Hi everybody, welcome to the stream. If you're new here or not, welcome in. My name's Ryan, and today, as you can see from the title, wow, okay. Like one of those times that like I could see the word, but I couldn't say the word for whatever reason, you know. Yeah, anyway, fun times. Yeah, one second. Getting this going. Alright. Yeah, so it's, it's been a day. Thank you for showing up, Honeycomb. That is very good. Alright. There you go. Thanks for Honeycomb. Yeah, so. Anyone have any particular observations before we dive in? I realize this is a bit later in the day than I would have liked it to be, but you know. Computer system crash and then brain system crash, so you know, things happen. All that being said, there we go. So, on a plus, I finally got to exactly the 50% mark. So yeah, considerably less than I would have liked, but there we go. So we've got Y and Donalada for this discussion period. I'm gonna try and have, you know, 50 to 75% be for next week. We'll see what happens. I don't know. Yeah. So, as previous discussed, and once again, I'm trying to see if having the mic up yonder here is a better option, which I'm trying to edit a video right now where I keep knocking it, so it's just reinforcing that I need to not have it on my immediate person in order for it to function properly. So, yeah, again, let me know if having it somewhere not on me directly it doesn't work. So far it seems to be doing okay, so yeah, let me know. But anyway, to do a short Okay, one sec. For anyone not in the in the Discord, the last couple of days my neck has been completely wonky, so yeah. Thought we were gonna be alright, but apparently need to bust out the heat back again. So there we go. Let's see. Okay. The phone is charged enough that I can get away with not having it plugged in all the time. Alright, there we go. So, anyway. Fun things. As a short recap, up to this point in the biographies slash narrative slash however you want to describe the text, we've got Elizabeth Bishop, who was a poet and what's her full name? I've been reading it as Lota or Donna Lota for the entirety of okay, Lota de Macedo Soares. Yeah. Okay. Who is a Brazilian I don't know that it should be classified as a socialite, but knows a lot of people in power in Brazil at the time. Yeah, okay. The description in all the info is that she was a well-connected Brazilian woman. So yeah, there's that. And the main kind of conflict, I suppose, is that at this point in the narrative, she's had a decade-long or nearly decade-long relationship with Bishop and has been devoting all of her time and energy to a public works project to adapt an old like the old remains of a quarry into a park setup and all the political issues and things that go along with it. Thank you for the hugs, honeycomb. Okay. Yeah, no worries. Have have a good sleep. I will see you later. Have a good one. Yeah, we'll totally be out for a good discuss next week. So have a good one, friends. Have a fabulous rest of your day. Anyhow, so yeah, that's where we are up to this point. And we're opening the Y chapter, and when I'm saying that it's chapters 10 and 11 or whatever number, there's no chapter numbers. They're all um they're all named, but that's the point in the storyline that we're at here, right? And we've got Lota, who was known for kind of pushing convention, like pushing conventional boundaries. We'll say that. Because someone who was female and unmarried and kind of doing her own thing, but also like was living openly with a partner of the same gender. So there's that. Yeah. So the Y chapter, so 10, chapter 10. Yeah, there we go. Which, incidentally, this is also a good reason to not have the mic on me. Because, yeah, it would be, like, completely roasting right now. So, anyway. It opens with, like, Lotta kind of getting tired of the runaround of trying to get the politicians involved in the whole park setup, the park project that she's been put in charge of, more or less, to actually take what she's wanting to do and run with it, right? Partly because she doesn't have any like, not backing, that's not the word that I was looking for, but she doesn't have any formal training in architecture or landscaping or anything, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if you have people around you who are trained in that, because there's only so much that a designer can do without, like, the structural knowledge and things for that. And that's not to say that you can't have the structural knowledge and how things work together and all that without formal training. That's just something that you tend to not see or not see as much. So, something to keep in mind here. And in this particular example, and I forget what point it switches between the chapters, but in the two that we're talking about for today, there's a lot of okay, I don't know if it picked up, but on the mic, but like there was either some kind of servo noise or it was a siren that was like off somewhere. So that that's what the response was. That's what the facial reaction was. But yeah. Anyway, where was I? Apologies. The mental train has left the building and has derailed somewhere on the tracks. Don't know where it went exactly. Right. I will consult my notes. But, you know, all all that seems to be in the brain space at the moment is like these guys. So yeah, this one was a project from a while back, and this little buddy was the project from Thursday. So yeah, because sometimes we do crochet things on the channel here. Anyway, we'll see what the notes say, because that was most definitely not it. I want to say it was something about how she had this giant vision for the park set up and kept being met with opposition about it. That sounds right. Okay, we'll go with that because it's accurate, regardless of whether or not that's where the train was going. But one of the main sticking points is that she wanted to have two roads going through the space. And at the point that they're building everything, there's four roads going through the space. So it would be a matter of redirecting or removing two roadways or somehow otherwise not having those two roads interacting with the park setup. For both the overall like aesthetic of it, but also for a general safety thing. If there's like a big space where kids are playing, and for the overall well-being of the wild adjacent space that she was trying to create. Not wild per se, because from the sounds of it, it would still have like large lawns and like soccer pitches and things like that. But she was wanting to create this like what sounds like kind of a multi-generational activity space, kind of, where there's some playgrounds and there's like open field space and some trees and some kind of like eating spot and everything. And the people, majority, if not, I think at the point that she was brought into the idea of a project existing, I believe she was the only woman on the team, and then she brought in a few more. And the guys didn't really see the validity in having her there. I didn't particularly want her there, which to a degree makes perfect sense. You have a bunch of people who have trained for years to be architects and designers and what have you, and then you have some random person who happens to be friends with the governor, I want to say, and is given a position equal to them based on that alone. It's bound to ruffle some feathers, you know? And again, just because you have an interesting idea doesn't mean that you know how to execute it properly. But it also seems like there were a lot of instances where people were trying to go against what she was wanting to do just to be contrary, so there's that. And then you have Bishop, who it ow, okay, there we go. It seems to be kind of an interesting dichotomy, because she'd been in Brazil for years, and seemed to have a very limited comprehension of Portuguese, refused to speak Portuguese around Lotta's friends, so like further alienating any possible relationship between herself and Lotta's friends, who already didn't like her. But also was translating prose and poetry into English from the Portuguese. Which, my only experience with Portuguese is in context of this, really. Like, I've heard it spoken and I've seen it written out, and it looks very similar to Spanish, which makes sense because they're from neighboring countries. But it's got its own like lyricism and kind of melody that goes to it. And one of the notes in the one of the translator's notes at the start of this was that getting the it's really hard to translate between Portuguese and English because getting the transliteration to maintain that kind of evocative language is very difficult, which isn't a thing that you can really do generally without being very well versed in both of them. So, like, if she was so adept with the Portuguese, how would she be able to do the translation? Anyway, moving on. And then she was hired by Time Life, or she was told she would get a bursary of, I think it was $10,000, in order to write a journalistic book about Brazil, right? And she would be paid essentially to travel around Brazil and write things for Time Life about Brazil. And there was mention in here that she wanted to talk about the Brazilian sense of humor and how they did particular things local to particular regions, and the multidimensionality of the culture, essentially. And then you have Time come in and, what was it? Quote, the photographers from Time Life had already been in Rio. They had been directed to take pictures suggestive of a, quote, developing country. Bishop wanted them to take pictures of orchids and hummingbirds. She wanted to write about Brazilian sense of humor as expressed on truck bumpers. So, bumper stickers, presumably. She wanted to describe the poetry of a bamboo birdcage or of pots put out in a window in the sun. She wanted to show that this country had Prati, Cabo Frio, Ouro Preto, jewels in front of which Brasilia was just a glittering Yuga. Actually, I have the Google. I will do the Google. A showy thing, especially one that is useless or worthless. Oh, okay. That. She wanted to show that this country had a number of fabulous elements, jewels in front of which Brasilia was just a shiny, worthless thing. Okay. Interesting take. Wanted to say that in Brazil, a delightful intimacy really existed between bosses and servants. That the building's caretaker greeted her with a hug, asking, "How are you, my daughter?" Wanted to speak of the insight and malice of the lyrics of Brazilian popular music. But that's not exactly what Time Life wanted to focus on. And there's a few passages in there where she seems to get really depressed and goes back to drinking when the book is published and the editors have completely changed the narrative that she was trying to share, which is a thing that you see far too often. And like, especially if it's something where whoever is financing the story has like a particular angle that they were going for, and especially within that, something that I've noticed with anthropological texts that have a noticeable bias, or you can, like, once you know who financed it, you can see threads of that person or that company's influence in the reported data. And that seems to be the kind of thing that's happening here. Which, not the best there. Like it all. Yeah. But there we go. Yeah. Okay. I know there was a reason that I highlighted a few of these passages. I'm just needing to revisit the text itself to remember away. Okay. Oh yeah. We've got, so at this point we've got Lotta, who is almost entirely consumed by this point by working on the park setup. I want to say it's the atelier. That might not be the right word though. Well, we'll revisit it as we go. But we've got Lotta, who's almost completely consumed by the park project. And we've got Bishop, who's trying to find her footing and figure out how she fits in with this new iteration, this evolution. There we go. This new evolution of Lotta's life. And the comparison is made to the great rivers of Brazil. So, the meeting of the waters, the confluence of two great rivers, Amazon and apologies once again when I completely butcher this. Pronunciation is hard enough with English sometimes, so bear with me. The meeting of the waters, the confluence of the two great rivers, Amazon and Tapajos. Without sorry. I don't know if it's the coffee that I drank like a couple hours ago or something else, but my eyes are just going weird. Alright, here. Let's try this again. The meeting of the waters, the confluence of two great rivers, Amazon and Tapajos, without either surrendering its identity, each maintaining its brown, its blue, in a dazzling dialectic. If she and Lotta, so if Bishop and Lotta, so if she and Lotta can meet in this way without her feeling diluted in Lotta, swallowed in Lotta's current. So, trying to maintain her own identity, but also flow along the same path. And having a hard time being able to do that, essentially. And yeah, it's there we go. the control thing was over here messing with everything else. Anyway, moving on. So also we've got a situation where Lotta is friends with some major players in Brazilian politics and is trying to get everyone to agree to what she wants to do for what she wants to do things with. That didn't really make sense as a sentence. Alright. Rephrase. There's things that Lotta wants to do for her particular projects, and she's trying to get the people she is friends with to back what she's wanting to do. And happens to know a number of high-level players in Brazilian politics at the time. In contrast, Bishop can't stand politics and wants absolutely nothing to do with it. Which ends up with an interesting kind of dichotomy there of trying to be part of the conversation because that's kind of the only way that you can be around Lota at this point, but also trying to avoid it at all costs because politics and things. Yeah. A tarot, yeah, that's the word. There we go. There's also a note that Lotta's relationship with the governor, Carlos, ended up becoming more like a woman who was being mistreated by her husband, according to the text, than a friend who wasn't doing what she wanted him to do. Which is just putting more strain on the relationship with Bishop. Okay, one sec. Alright. I have to ice my wrist again after we get off stream. It was. It's been more or less okay for the last couple days, but like right after we ended on Thursday, it just completely died a painful death. So, yeah, I mean, let's see. Okay, so yeah, Herbie not only works as a neck support, but also as just the right amount of wrist support to function properly. There we go. He's a very good Glyptodon. There we go. Yes. Anyway, moving on. I seem to have. Oh yeah, that's what that was. And all throughout everything, not only is Bishop comparing herself to like other artists and Lotta's friends and everything, but she's comparing herself and her accomplishments to Lotta herself. And there's a thing in here where she finally got, or Lotta finally got the major players in her project to agree to what she wanted to do, and things were moving forward, so she was celebrating. Meanwhile, Bishop was over here just staring at a blank page, having nothing to show for it. And between feeling kind of abandoned because her partner wasn't like acknowledging that she was there most of the time, it seems like, and that feeling of inadequacy, it sounds like that was, if not instrumental, then it didn't help any. The falling off the wagon, and there's a few instances in here where the I can't remember her name, but the housekeeper assistant person ended up finding her drunk or having to go out to one of the bars and bring her home because she was drunk. So that, and at least in this iteration of the events, because again, it's like, because it's a dual biography that is written in a lyrical style, it's important to periodically, remember that it's like actual events happening. It's not just characters in the storyline. So at least in this iteration of things, but it would make sense for the time period especially too. You have a number of instances where it seems like the menfolk are doing whatever they feel like they want to do, and are just kind of patting Lota on the head, like, ah, yes, you did a good job, yes, you run along now. Which part of that might be able to be excused with, the idea that she doesn't have the formal training for the architecture and landscaping and everything, but she knows enough people who seem to have that background that that's not really an issue. Because if you have a vision of something and you're the designer behind it, you don't necessarily need the background in whatever the thing is that you're designing. You just need to have access to people who do have that background and can redirect what you're trying to do if it doesn't physically work as an idea. Like, if you want to have a marshland sort of thing, and that's the idea that you're trying to create, but you want to have a marshland in the middle of like a densely packed oak forest or something, that's not really gonna work. If it was ash or something else that, could work in a waterlogged environment, that's one thing. But oak don't really like that very much. Or like a giant lake in the middle of an actual desert. There's some times that it could work depending on the landscape and rainfall and everything, because there are lakes that exist in desert environments. Most of the time they're transient, and most of the time it's a seasonal thing. So that whenever the water table gets to a certain level, or the rainfall is collected in a certain spot, you have a lake. But like if you wanted it there year round, you would probably have an issue. But if you have people on the design team who can say like, yeah, but like this bit right here, that's not gonna work. Or with architecture, like if it structurally needs reinforcement somewhere, you can work with it, you know? Um, and then you have um, like 3 instances within one page, essentially, right? Uh, don't worry, everything's gonna turn out all right. Finish the book however you need to. We'll go to New York and I'll help you work with it. Said, Lota to Bishop. And then, Elizabeth, you're the most important thing in my life. You can be sure I will never fail you. And then uh, yeah. And it more or less, when they were in New York, that's going alright. But they essentially had to go to New York and then come straight back to Brazil without, a break in between, nothing to just kind of hang out for a while and enjoy the sights or anything. And upon coming back to Brazil, Lada was uh, once again in the middle of the garden park project. Um, which is kind of doubly an issue at that point, because there's a thing there that Lota and the household that had been built with Lota was the only like secure place that Bishop had at that point. And she had had the experience of someone like recognizing her worth and her identity and stuff. And that intensity is now being turned towards like another source, another project, and it's kind of messing with the equilibrium, which stands for a reason, you know. And that's the end of that particular chapter. And so now we've got the shed, and that's the second one for today. That would be chapter 11. Oh yeah, here we go. The description of what she wanted the park to actually be, right? She explained that specific areas should be reserved for babies, for children, for teenagers, and for the elderly. The design of the park should make it easy for people to relax outdoors, allowing them to forget that they were surrounded by automobiles. The idea wasn't to fill the park with recreational equipment, but, on the contrary, to leave lots of open space so that people, especially children, could feel at ease. Yeah. Spaces for pickup soccer, safety measures around the playgrounds because they'd be located near roadways, and yeah. So at the start of the project, there was an agreement that weekends were sacred and there wouldn't be any work on the weekends, and that is slowly eroding. And then there's kind of a turning point, it seems like, where they had agreed to do a lunch thing for Lotta's birthday because she had a number of other things that she had on the calendar for like that night and whatnot, and Bishop showed up drunk, causing a scene, and it's interesting because in some of the other chapters we've seen Nana show up as kind of a not an antagonistic narrator, but Well, sort of. Sort of. She didn't seem to have much nice to say about Bishop, I'll say that much. But she shows up in this particular chapter, and there's a part where it's from Nana's POV, and she's being told about the work group that Lota put together, and it's essentially just a bunch of troll friends, and Lotta's trying to figure out why it's not working properly, and Nana. Again, accent marks get me every time. I want to say it's Nana. I was just sitting there like, you do know that this isn't really a new thing. Like, we've been friends with these people for years. Like, what? Not surprised. Alright. Like, there's a situation in here where, like, Lotto was really annoyed with one of her friends named Sergio, who she had asked to design a grill sort of thing for the students, because they were going to need to demolish the existing student restaurant. And was really annoyed that Sergio had developed this like 2-story, multi-thousand square meter space, and that it would be all these like really involved things. And where was it? And Nana's just sitting there like, you do know that it was Sergio that you gave that instruction to, right? But you, why are you surprised that that's what you ended up with? I don't know. But there's a very poignant bit in here though. Like, Lana, it's difficult to force people to work for free. Not all of them have the devotion you have to Carlos to, warrant the working for free to do a thing that the governor thought was interesting initially. You know. And there was a instance in here where it was, one of the guys got up to do a speech, and was it everything he did, he declared, was to prove he was a man, which really can describe a lot of things that people in political power have done over the years, and a myriad of situations. Because, showing your male virility through subjugating a whole bunch of people, or trying to annihilate entire ecosystems, or whatever it is just, great fun. Um, yeah. And yeah, there's a note in here that Bishop was reading Lewis Mumford, and the analysis of evolution of the city in the West, and the foolishness of destroying areas of city to build highways and parking lots. Yeah. And not only was Lota trying to build the park in the Otero, but she was wanting to kind of create a foundation or something to maintain it after she wasn't there to work with it anymore. Which it seems like was also like adding another stressor to the whole thing. And in all of this, Bishop is commenting that Lota was losing one of her riches, her sense of humor, which was kind of what initially drew Bishop to her in the first place, in the sounds of it. Everything was now serious and menacing and exasperating. Lota was at war. Heroic or a crackpot? Yeah. And then we've got other people looking at their relationship, and from the outside, commenting that it seemed that Bishop had taken on the role of kind of the meek housewife type, and Lota had taken on the role of the like overbearing man who must have everything his way sort of archetype. So yeah. Okay. There's a thing that's highlighted. Who's talking? Bianco? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so Bianco in let me see. I can't remember the origins of this particular one. I'm not seeing anything. Nada. Alright. Basically, Bianco is more or less Lotta's friend, and Mm, just an interesting description from someone who's supposed to be a friend, associate person, right? Lana should feel extremely gratified because she was a South American Indian who had furiously enchanted a great poet from the First World, but Bishop's aquatic eyes, which that interesting description. Bishop's aquatic eyes seemed to be scrutinizing her future alongside that feverish entrepreneur. So, Lana should be grateful that Bishop wanted to spend time with her, but also at present, because of the lack of attention and everything else, Bishop is contemplating what her place in Lotta's life is what I'm getting from this. It's just phrased interestingly. And then the last paragraph in the chapter, we've got a description of, like, Lotta is really annoyed that she had to put up with, that she had to deal with all of these, like, celebrities, and she was expected to be the tour guide around Brazil, and that she had to put off her projects while her friends, more or less, were in the area. And there's a note that at one point she would have been ecstatic about that. She would have been really happy to have all of these big names wanting to talk to her and interacting with her all the time. And now it was basically all she could do to just hang out enough to, like, satisfy the friends that, like, she'd done her part, I guess, before being able to escape back to the Atero project. Yeah. And that's the end of the chapter. So the next one is Pink Dog, and that's where we're gonna come back next week. So, no, it's only been like an hour and a half, almost. But yeah, so anything else that we can touch on while we're here, or no? Anybody? Yeah. Alright. Well, thank you muchly for hanging out and taking part in the streaming shenanigans. Let's see. Yeah. So, anyway. I keep doing. Okay, there we go. Anyway, so that is it for for today. Um, there we go. So for purposes there we go. So for purposes of the stream and whatnot, if anyone is in the chat who is not showing up, or rather, yeah. So for anyone in the chat or watching this after the fact, thank you very much for hanging out and participating in the shenanigans. It's much appreciated. For now, we're gonna go pop over and raid Potch. He's a pretty fabulous streamer dude who does a lot of graffiti style work. I'm gonna unplug the mic and yeah, have a fabulous rest of your day. I hope it's amazing. See you later. Bye, everybody. Bye. Bye, y'all. Alright. Okay. Just popping that in there so that I can get to it. Apologies for the audio. There we go. Alright, now. That so I can actually hear what I'm doing. Okay. Alright. Have a good one, everybody. If it ever actually loads. I don't know. We'll see.